Did you enjoy the $33 million, sweetheart? I asked the question softly, standing in the doorway of the living room I had cleaned every Sunday for the past 20 years. My daughter froze mid-step. What do you mean, Mom? She replied, her voice too quick, too careful. I mean the money you said didn't exist, I said. The money you got, right before you told me to pack my things and leave. Behind her, my son-in-law shifted uncomfortably. He didn't look at me. He hadn't looked at me in days. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. Because what happened in that house didn't begin with money. It began with silence. 3 days earlier, I was sitting at the same kitchen table where I had raised my daughter, folding laundry that wasn't even mine anymore. At 68, my hands don't move as fast as they used to, but I still like to keep things neat. Order gave me comfort, especially after my husband passed 2 years ago. The house had felt different since then. Too quiet, too still, but it was still my home. Or at least, I thought it was. That morning, my daughter came in wearing a dress I had never seen before. Expensive, the kind of fabric that doesn't wrinkle when you sit. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor like she was announcing something. I need to talk to you, she said, not sitting down. I smiled. Of course. Do you want coffee? No, she said. This won't take long. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. My son-in-law leaned against the counter behind her, arms crossed. Watching, not speaking. We've been reviewing some financial things, she continued. And it doesn't make sense for you to stay here anymore. I blinked. I'm sorry, I asked. This house is under my name now, she said. And with everything changing, it's just not practical. Not practical. I looked around the kitchen. The cabinets I painted myself. The stove I saved for 6 months to replace. The small crack in the tile near the sink where my daughter dropped a glass when she was 9. Your father and I bought this house, I said quietly. She sighed. Dad's gone, Mom. Things are different now. Different. That word again. I studied her face. Perfect makeup. Calm expression. No hesitation. When did this happen? I asked. A while ago, she replied. You just didn't need to worry about it. Didn't need to worry. I nodded slowly. And now? I asked. Now I think it's best if you find somewhere smaller, she said. Maybe one of those senior apartments. We can help you look. Help me look. As if I were a stranger. As if I hadn't spent 35 years building a life inside these walls. I glanced at my son-in-law. He looked away. That was when I understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision. Already made. You want me to leave? I said. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, yes. Just like that. No anger. No apology. Just yes. I folded the last towel in my lap and placed it neatly on the table. I see, I said. And in that moment, I knew something wasn't right. Not just about the house, but about everything. The first night after I left, I slept in my car. It was parked outside a 24-hour grocery store, the kind with bright fluorescent lights that never turn off. I chose that spot on purpose. It felt safer, or maybe just less lonely. At 68, you don't imagine starting over like that. You imagine quiet mornings, a familiar kitchen, maybe a cup of coffee by the window your husband installed 20 years ago, not a blanket in the back seat of a sedan, counting the hours until sunrise. I had only taken one suitcase, not because I didn't have more things, but because I understood something the moment my daughter said, you should find somewhere smaller. Nothing in that house belonged to me anymore. Not the furniture I picked, not the dishes I bought, not even the bed I had shared with my husband for over 3 decades. So I packed light. A few clothes, my medications, the small photo album I kept hidden in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. The rest, I left behind. The air that night dropped to about 52 degrees. I remember because I kept checking the temperature on the dashboard, as if seeing the number change would somehow make me feel warmer. I wrapped my coat tighter around me and leaned back against the seat. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there in the kitchen. Calm, certain, unmoved. Dad's gone, Mom. Things are different now. I had repeated that sentence in my head so many times, it no longer sounded like her voice. It sounded like a verdict. The next morning, I washed my face in the grocery store restroom. I looked at myself in the mirror longer than usual. My hair was thinner than I remembered. My eyes tired. But there was something else too. Clarity. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to make excuses for her. Not telling myself she was stressed, or misunderstood, or influenced by her husband. No, this had been planned. Carefully, quietly, and I had missed every sign. I spent the day driving. Not far, just around the same few streets, as if staying close would somehow keep me connected to a life that was already gone. I passed by the bank where my husband and I had opened our first joint account. I passed the diner where we used to have breakfast every Sunday after church. Places filled with memories. Places that suddenly felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. By the afternoon, I realized something that made my hands tighten around the steering wheel. If my daughter had taken control of the house, if she had already transferred things into her name, then this wasn't just about me leaving. It was about when it started. And more importantly, how much else I didn't know. I exhaled slowly. I need to find out the truth, I whispered to myself. Because whatever had just happened to me didn't begin 3 days ago, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to end quietly either. That afternoon, I called my daughter. Not to argue, not to beg, just to hear her voice, one more time, without that cold distance. She didn't pick up on the first ring, or the second, or the third. On the fourth, she answered. Mom, I'm in the middle of something, she said quickly. No warmth, no pause. Can this wait? I gripped the phone a little tighter. I won't take long, I said. I just needed to ask you something. A sigh on the other end. Soft, but sharp. What is it? I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I already knew the answer might hurt more than the silence. When did you transfer the house into your name? I asked. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. A while ago, she said, repeating the same words from the kitchen. I told you that. No, I replied quietly. You didn't. Another pause, then a shift in her tone. Slightly defensive now. Well, it was handled legally. Everything was done properly. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry. I closed my eyes for a second. I'm not worried, I said. I'm trying to understand. You're overthinking this, Mom, she said. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. I looked out through the windshield at the parking lot. People coming and going with grocery bags, living their normal lives. Did your father sign anything before he passed? I asked. This time, the silence stretched longer. No, she said finally. But that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everything inside me went still. Then how did it happen? I asked. Her voice sharpened. Mom, I don't have time to go through legal details right now. If you have questions, talk to a lawyer. A lawyer. Not, I'll explain. Not, let's sit down. A lawyer. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I understand, I said. Good, she replied quickly. I'll call you later. She didn't. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, and for a long moment, I just sat there. No tears, no anger, just silence. But something had changed. Before that call, I still had a small piece of hope. That maybe this was a misunderstanding. That maybe she would explain. That maybe there was still a thread of the daughter I had raised. After that call, that hope was gone. I started the car and drove to the bank. The same branch my husband and I had trusted for over 30 years. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just saw it differently now. Inside, everything smelled the same. Clean, quiet, predictable. A young teller greeted me with a polite smile. How can I help you today, ma'am? I returned the smile. I need to review some old documents, I said. Accounts, property records, anything tied to my name and my late husband's. She nodded and typed something into her computer. Of course. Let me pull that up for you. As she worked, I folded my hands in front of me. Calm. Still. But inside, I could feel it. That quiet shift. The one that happens when you stop asking why and start asking how. Because whatever my daughter had done, it wasn't sudden. It wasn't emotional. It was planned. And I was about to find out just how far back it really went. The teller's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. I watched the screen reflect faintly in her glasses, lines of information scrolling past that I couldn't yet see, but somehow already felt. All right, she said after a moment. I found the primary account under your late husband's name and a property record attached. My chest tightened slightly. Can I see it? I asked. Of course. She turned the monitor slightly toward me. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. There were dates, signatures, transfer records. Clean, organized, final. My eyes stopped on one line. 11 months. I leaned in a little closer. That can't be right, I said quietly. The teller glanced at the screen. It shows the ownership was transferred to your daughter nearly a year ago, she explained. It appears all documents were signed and processed legally. Legally? I nodded slowly. Who signed them? I asked. She clicked into another section. The documents were authorized with a power of attorney, she said. Assigned shortly before the transfer. Power of attorney. The words settled heavily in my mind. When was that assigned? I asked. She scrolled again. About 13 months ago. 13. That was 1 month before my husband passed. I sat back in the chair. Everything around me went quiet. Not silent, just distant. Like I was hearing the world from underwater. My husband had been sick during that time. Weak. Tired. Sleeping more than he was awake. I remembered helping him sit up in bed. Holding a glass of water to his lips. Signing papers? No. He barely had the strength to hold a pen. Ma'am? The teller asked gently. I realized I hadn't spoken in several seconds. I'm all right, I said, my voice steady. Can you show me the authorization document? She nodded and opened another file. There it was. A scan page. My husband's name. His signature at the bottom. Or at least something that looked like it. I stared at it. The curve of the letters. The spacing. Something felt off. Not wrong enough to scream, but not right enough to ignore. Was anyone else present when this was filed? I asked. The teller checked the notes. It says it was submitted in person, she replied. By the assigned representative. And who was that? I asked. She looked up. Your daughter. Of course. I nodded once. Slowly. Carefully. As if any sudden movement might break something fragile inside me. I thanked her. Took copies of the documents. Walked out of the bank without rushing. The sun outside was brighter than I expected. For a moment, I had to shield my eyes. Then I stood there on the sidewalk, holding a folder filled with answers I hadn't been prepared to find. 11 months. That meant, while I was still cooking his meals, while I was still adjusting his blankets, while I was still sitting beside him at night, listening to his breathing, she had already begun. Quietly, patiently. I opened the car door and sat down. Placed the folder on the passenger seat. I didn't touch it again right away. Instead, I stared straight ahead. And I let the pieces come together. Not all at once, but slowly, clearly. She didn't just ask me to leave. She made sure. I had nowhere to stay. I exhaled. Long, steady. No. I whispered to myself. This didn't start with the house. My fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. This started long before I ever noticed. And for the first time since I left that kitchen, I wasn't just hurt. I was certain. I didn't drive away right away. The folder sat beside me, quiet but heavy, like it carried more than just paper. I reached for it again. This time, I opened it slowly, page by page, not rushing, because I knew whatever I was about to find would change something I couldn't undo. The power of attorney document was dated 13 months ago. I traced the date with my finger. That was around the time my husband started forgetting small things. Where he left his glasses. What day it was. Whether he had already taken his medication. Nothing serious at first. At least, that's what I told myself. Then I turned to the next page. There was a witness signature. Not mine. I frowned slightly. I had been there every day. Every night. I handled his meals. His appointments. His medications. If he signed something that important, I would have known. Wouldn't I? I looked closer. The witness name was unfamiliar. Not a neighbor. Not a family friend. Just a name. And beneath it, a notary stamp. Clean. Official. Final. I leaned back in the seat, the paper still in my hands. And then, something surfaced in my memory. A moment I hadn't thought about in months. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone to the pharmacy to pick up his prescription. Just a quick trip. 15 minutes, maybe 20. When I came back, the house felt different. Quiet in a way that wasn't natural. My daughter was there, sitting in the living room. Her purse on the table. Her phone in her hand. Oh, you're back already? She had said. Already. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say. Did someone come by? I had asked her. She shook her head too quickly. No, just me. I stopped by to check on Dad. Check on Dad. At the time, I smiled. I thought she was being a good daughter. I closed my eyes now. That moment played again. Clearer this time. Sharper. The way she avoided my eyes. The way the bedroom door was slightly open. The way my husband was already asleep when I went in, deeper than usual. I opened my eyes and looked back at the document. The date. The signature. The missing time. She didn't just plan it. I whispered. She timed it. I placed the paper back into the folder carefully. My hands were steady, calmer than they had been all day, because the confusion was gone now, replaced by something else. Something colder. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't stress. It wasn't influence from her husband. No, this was deliberate. Step by step. Quiet. Patient. I stared ahead through the windshield again. People walking past. Cars moving. Life going on like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because now I knew. She didn't just take the house. She took advantage of a man who couldn't defend himself. And she made sure I wouldn't be there to stop it. I exhaled slowly. No more guessing, I said under my breath. No more asking. My fingers rested lightly on the steering wheel. This ends when I decide it ends. And for the first time since I left that house, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. I didn't go back to the house. Not that day. Not the next. Because I understood something now. Walking back in without a plan would only make me look exactly how she wanted me to look. Confused. Emotional. Easy to dismiss. So I stayed away. And I made one call. His name was Martin Keller. He had been our attorney for over 25 years. Handled the paperwork when we bought the house. Helped us set up our will. Even came to my husband's retirement dinner once. He wasn't just a lawyer. He knew us. Or at least, he knew who we used to be. When I told him my name over the phone, there was a pause. Then his voice softened. "I'm so sorry for your loss," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "I need your help with something." We met that same afternoon. His office hadn't changed. Same dark wood desk. Same shelves filled with binders that looked older than my daughter. He gestured for me to sit. "What's going on?" he asked. I didn't start with emotions. I placed the folder in front of him. "Please look at these," I said. He opened it. Turned one page. Then another. His expression didn't change much, but I noticed the way his eyes slowed down on certain lines. The power of attorney. The transfer date. The signature. "How long ago did you find out about this?" he asked. 3 days, I said. He nodded once, then leaned back in his chair. "This wasn't filed through my office," he said. "I figured," I replied. "If it had been," he continued, "I would have required a direct evaluation of your husband's mental capacity at the time of signing." Mental capacity. I let that settle. "He didn't have that," I said quietly. "Not at that time." Martin studied me carefully. "Can you prove that?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I thought about the pill bottles, the doctor visits, the nights he didn't recognize, the room he was in, the afternoon he called me by his sister's name. "I can't," I said. Martin nodded again. Then he tapped the document lightly. "If this power of attorney was obtained under questionable conditions," he said slowly, "and used to transfer property shortly after." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "What about the signature?" I asked. He adjusted his glasses and looked again. "It resembles his," he said. "But that doesn't mean it was given willingly or knowingly." Knowingly. That word mattered. The room felt very still. Not heavy. Not overwhelming. Just clear. For the first time, everything had direction. Not guesses. Not feelings. Facts. Martin closed the folder and slid it back toward me. "You have a case," he said. "Simple. Direct. You're not asking for revenge," he added. "You're asking for correction." Correction. I nodded once. "That's all I want," I said. As I stood to leave, he added one more thing. "If your daughter acted the way these documents suggest," he said, "she's not expecting you to push back." I paused at the door. Then I answered without turning around. "She doesn't know me as well as she thinks she does." Outside, the air felt different. Not warmer, not lighter, but steadier. I walked to my car, holding the folder a little tighter now. Not because it was heavy, but because it finally meant something. 3 days ago, I was sitting in my car, trying to understand what had happened to my life. Now, I understood exactly what had been done, and more importantly, what needed to happen next. I sat in the car for a long time after leaving Martin's office. The engine was off. The air inside still. For a moment, I didn't move. Didn't reach for the keys. Didn't open the door. Because for the first time since all of this began, I wasn't thinking about what she did. I was thinking about what I was about to do. Take her to court. My daughter. The words didn't feel heavy, but they didn't feel light either. They just sat there. I looked down at my hands. The same hands that held her when she was born. The same hands that packed her school lunches. The same hands that stayed up all night when she had a fever. And now, those same hands had just signed papers against her. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not in pain. Not in anger. Just remembering. There was a time when she used to run into this house after school. Drop her bag by the door. Call out, "Mom, I'm home." like it was the safest place in the world. I exhaled slowly. For a moment, I wondered if I was going too far. I said under my breath. The thought didn't last long, because right behind it, another memory came. Her standing in that same kitchen, arms crossed, voice calm. You should find somewhere smaller. No hesitation, no softness, no space for me in the decision. My eyes opened. Steady again. This didn't start with me, I said quietly, and it doesn't end with me staying silent. I reached for the keys, started the engine, and as the car pulled out of the parking lot, I didn't feel torn anymore. I felt certain. I didn't go back to the grocery store that night. Instead, I checked into a small motel just off the highway. Nothing special. A single bed, thin walls, a lamp that flickered if you touched the switch too quickly, but it had a door that locked. And for now, that was enough. I placed the folder on the nightstand and sat down slowly. For a long time, I didn't open it again. Not because I was afraid of what was inside, but because I already knew what it meant. I lay back against the pillow and stared at the ceiling. And that's when the memories started to come back. Not all at once. Just pieces. Small things I hadn't paid attention to before. The first one was about the mail. About a year ago, my daughter started stopping by more often. At first, I thought it was kindness. Let me help you with the paperwork, Mom, she would say. You shouldn't have to deal with all these bills. I remember feeling grateful, relieved, even. After my husband got sick, everything had felt heavier. So I let her help. At some point, the mail stopped coming directly to me. Or at least, that's how it felt. Statements, notices, letters from the bank. She would bring them in already opened sometimes. Oh, it's nothing important, she'd say. Just routine stuff. Routine. I nodded back then. Trusted her. I turned slightly on the bed, staring at the dim light in the corner of the room. Another memory surfaced. This one sharper. It was a phone call. I had picked up the house phone one afternoon. A man on the other end asked for my husband. Said he needed to confirm a few details regarding authorization. I didn't understand what he meant. So I told him my husband wasn't feeling well, that he couldn't really handle calls like that. There was a pause. Then the man said, "That's all right, ma'am. We already received confirmation earlier." Earlier. I remember frowning, because no one had called earlier. At least, not that I knew of. I sat up slowly on the bed. That moment, it didn't feel small anymore. It felt like a piece, one I had ignored. Then there was the time she insisted on taking my husband to one of his appointments alone. "Mom, you need rest," she said. "I've got this." I remember hesitating, but she smiled. So I let her. When they came back, he was unusually quiet. Tired. More than usual. I asked how the appointment went. She answered for him. "Everything's fine," she said. "Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about." I let out a slow breath and closed my eyes. Each memory, lining up now. Not random. Not harmless. Connected. She didn't rush it, I whispered to myself. She built it. Step by step. Quietly. Carefully. I opened my eyes again and looked at the folder on the nightstand. For years, I thought I was protecting my family, keeping things together, holding everything in place after my husband got sick. But the truth was, while I was holding things together, someone else was rearranging everything behind my back. I stood up and walked over to the nightstand, placed my hand on the folder, not opening it, just resting there. "I see it now," I said softly, not with anger, not with regret, just clarity. Because this wasn't just about one decision, or one document, or one moment in the kitchen. This was a pattern, and now that I could see it, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And that changed everything. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I had to, but because my mind was already moving. Clear, focused, quiet in a way it hadn't been in a long time. I sat at the small table by the window, a cup of motel coffee in my hands, untouched. Across from me, the folder, still closed. Because at that point, I didn't need to read it again. I already knew enough. 3 days ago, I had been asked to leave my own home. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't ask for explanations. And that was exactly what she expected. I could see it now. In her eyes that morning. Calm. Certain. She thought I would accept it. That I would step aside quietly, like I always had. Like when she took over the mail. Like when she answered questions that weren't hers to answer. Like when she made decisions and told me they were already done. I took a slow sip of the coffee. It had gone cold. I didn't mind. If I go back now, I said softly to myself, she wins. Not because she took the house, but because she would control the story. She's confused. She's emotional. She doesn't understand the paperwork. I could already hear it. So I didn't go back. I didn't call her again. I didn't ask for anything. Instead, I started writing things down. Dates, conversations, moments I remembered. Not perfectly, but clearly enough. The phone call about authorization. The afternoon she was alone with him. The documents I never saw. I wrote everything in a small notebook I bought from the front desk. Page after page. Not rushing. Just documenting. Then I made a second call. Not to my daughter. Not to argue. But to observe. I called the house. Let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then she answered. Hello. Her voice was lighter than I expected. Relaxed. Almost relieved. I didn't say anything. I just listened. A second passed. Then she spoke again. Hello? Who is this? Still no answer from me. Then a shift. Mom, she said. Quieter now. More cautious. I hung up. Gently. And I sat there for a moment. Thinking. Not about what she said. But about how she said it. No concern. No urgency. No, are you okay? Just uncertainty. Like she wasn't sure if I was gone for good or still part of the equation. I closed the notebook. Placed it next to the folder. She's not expecting anything. I whispered. Not resistance. Not questions. Not consequences. And that was her mistake. I stood up, slowly, and walked toward the door. The sun was higher now. The light stronger. 3 days ago, I left that house with one suitcase. No plan. No direction. Now, I had both. And I wasn't going back as someone asking for answers. I was going back as someone who already had them. I didn't wait long to take the next step. Because once you see the pattern, waiting only gives the other person more time to adjust theirs. That afternoon, I went back to Martin's office. This time, I didn't come with questions. I came with a list. I wrote everything down. I said, placing my notebook beside the folder. He opened it slowly, page by page. I watched his eyes move across the lines. Dates, times, small details, things that didn't seem important before, but now fit together too well. You've done more than most people would, he said after a while. I had time, I replied. He looked up at me. No, he said. You paid attention. He turned back to the documents. Then he reached for another file from his desk. This is what we do next, he said. He explained it simply. We would request a formal review of the property transfer. Challenge the validity of the power of attorney. Bring in medical records from the time your husband signed. Not to accuse. Not to argue. Just to show. If the timing and condition don't match, he said, the court will see it. The court. I nodded. Not afraid of the word. Just aware of what it meant. And my daughter? I asked. He paused. Then answered carefully. She will be notified, he said. Formally. Not a phone call. Not a conversation in the kitchen. A notice. Official. Unavoidable. I let that settle. Because I could already imagine her reaction. Not sadness. Not regret. Surprise. She's not expecting this, I said. No, Martin replied. She's expecting you to stay quiet. We finalized the paperwork that day. Signatures. Dates. Copies made. Everything clean. Everything clear. When I signed my name, my hand didn't shake. Not even a little. As I stood to leave, Martin handed me one more document. A temporary notice, he said. It prevents any immediate sale or transfer of the property until this is resolved. I looked at it. Simple words, but powerful. She can't move anything now? I asked. He shook his head. Not without consequences. Consequences. I folded the paper carefully and placed it in my bag. For a moment, I thought about the house, the kitchen, the table, the place where she stood and told me to leave. Then I thought about her, walking through that same house now, confident, certain, believing everything was already hers. I opened the office door and stepped outside. The air felt steady again. She's about to find out, I said quietly to myself. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just truth. Because 3 days ago, she thought the story was over, that she had already won. But she forgot something important. I was there from the beginning. I saw how everything was built. And now, I was the one deciding how it ends. On the 3rd day, she called me. I was sitting in the motel room, the same chair by the window, my notebook closed, my phone face down on the table. It rang once. I looked at the screen. Her name. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Mom. Her voice was different. Not calm. Not controlled. There was something underneath it now. Tension. Yes, I said. A pause. Then she spoke again, faster this time. Why did I get a legal notice this morning? I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit between us. I'm asking you something, she said, sharper now. Why is there a restriction filed on the house? The house. Not our home. Not your place. Just the house. I reviewed the documents, I said. Simple. Flat. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she laughed. But it wasn't real. Mom, you don't understand how these things work, she said. You didn't need to do that. Didn't need to. I think I did, I replied. Her tone shifted again. Less confident now. More pressing. Who told you to do this? She asked. Was it someone at the bank? Or did you go to a lawyer? I didn't answer the question. Because I didn't need to. You should have talked to me first, she continued. We could have handled this as a family. As a family. I looked out the window. Cars passing. People moving. Normal. You already handled it, I said. Quiet. Steady. Silence. Then, I heard it. A small crack in her voice. Not loud. But there. Mom, this is serious, she said. You're making things complicated for no reason. No reason. I have my reasons, I replied. She exhaled sharply. Then tried again. Softer this time. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot the other day, she said. You don't have to stay at some motel. You can come back. We'll figure things out. Come back. Now. I didn't smile. Didn't react. I just listened. 3 days ago, she stood in the kitchen and told me to leave. No hesitation. No discussion. Just a decision. Now, she was offering me a place again. I'm fine where I am, I said. Another pause. This one heavier. Mom, she said quietly. Do you know what could happen if this goes further? There it was. Not concern. Not care. Fear. Yes, I said. And you're still doing this? She asked. I am. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of something she hadn't expected. You're really going through with it, she said. Not a question. A realization. Yes, I replied. The line stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then she spoke one last time. Lower now. Controlled again. But not the same. Then don't expect me to just sit back and let you take everything, she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I wouldn't expect anything else, I said. She hung up. I placed the phone back on the table. Gently. And I sat there for a moment. Not thinking about what she said, but how she said it. 3 days ago, she was certain. Certain I would leave. Certain I would stay quiet. Certain I wouldn't understand. Now, that certainty was gone. I looked at the folder. Then at my notebook. She's starting to see it, I said softly. Not the full picture. Not yet. But enough. To know she was no longer in control. She came to see me the next day. Didn't call first. Didn't ask. There was a knock on the motel door around mid-morning. 2 short taps. Then silence. I knew it was her. Not because I expected it, but because there was no hesitation in the way she knocked. I walked to the door slowly. Didn't rush. Didn't ask who it was. I just opened it. She stood there in the hallway. Same posture. Same careful appearance. But something was different. Her eyes. They moved past me first, scanning the room behind my shoulder. The bed. The small table. The single chair. You're really staying here? She asked. No greeting. No, are you okay? Just that. For now, I said. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Her heels clicked against the tile floor, but not as confidently as before. This is unnecessary, she said, looking around. You could have just come home. Home. I didn't respond. She turned to face me, arms crossed, trying to rebuild that same control she had in the kitchen 3 days ago. You've made things a lot more complicated than they needed to be, she continued. Lawyers, legal notices, this isn't how families handle things. Families. I held her gaze. You handled it your way, I said. Now I'm handling it mine. A flicker. Just for a second. She exhaled and softened her tone. Mom, listen, she said, stepping a little closer. We can fix this. You don't need to drag this into court. It'll just make everything worse. Worse. For who? I asked. She paused. Not long. But enough. For everyone, she said. I nodded slowly, then walked past her to the small table. Picked up the folder. I spoke to an attorney, I said, and I reviewed the documents. Her posture stiffened. You shouldn't have done that without talking to me, she said quickly. I tried talking, I replied. You told me to find a lawyer. Silence. I opened the folder, pulled out 1 page. The power of attorney. Placed it on the table between us. This was signed when he could barely hold a glass of water, I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't shake. She looked at the paper, then away. It was legal, she said. Everything was done properly. Was it? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Her eyes came back to mine, and for the first time, there was no confidence in them. You don't understand how these things work, she said again, but softer now. There were professionals involved. Professionals. I'll let them explain it, I said. That landed. I saw it. The shift. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Just enough. Mom, she said, quieter now. If this goes forward, it's not going to end the way you think. I met her eyes. Calm. Steady. I'm not guessing anymore, I said. Silence filled the room. For a moment, she looked like she was about to say something else. Something different. But she didn't. Instead, she straightened her posture again. Pulled herself back together. Then I guess we'll deal with it in court, she said. I nodded once. I guess we will. She turned and walked to the door. Paused for half a second. Then left. The door closed quietly behind her. I didn't move right away. Just stood there, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. 3 days ago, she told me to leave my own home. Today, she walked out of mine, even if it was just a motel room. And this time, I was the one who stayed. The final decision came 2 weeks later. No phone call. No argument. Just a letter. I opened it at the same small table in the motel room where everything had begun to change. The paper was simple, clean, official. The court ruled that the power of attorney was invalid. The property transfer reversed. I didn't react right away. I just placed the letter down, folded my hands, and sat there in silence. Not because I was surprised, but because I understood what it really meant. The house would return to my name. The documents would be corrected. Everything restored on paper. But not everything goes back the way it was. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. The same view. The same parking lot. The same quiet morning. 3 days. That's all it took for my daughter to believe I had nothing left. And a little longer for me to understand that I still did. I packed my things that afternoon. The same suitcase. Still light. Still simple. When I returned to the house, it looked exactly the same from the outside. The paint. The porch. The small crack near the front step. But when I stepped inside, it felt different. Not empty. Not cold. Just honest. She wasn't there. Not my daughter. Not my son-in-law. Just silence. I walked into the kitchen, ran my fingers lightly along the table, the same one where she stood and told me to leave. I didn't sit down. I didn't stay long, because I wasn't there to return to the past. I was there to close something. A chapter. A belief. A version of family I had held onto for too long. I left a single envelope on the counter. Inside, a copy of the court decision, and a short note. I hope one day you understand why this mattered. Nothing more. No anger. No accusation. Just truth. Then I walked out, closed the door behind me, and this time, I locked it. Not to keep her out, but to remind myself. I had the right to. I didn't move far after that. A small place. 1 bedroom. Enough space for what I needed. Peace. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I wish I had handled things differently. Stayed quiet. Kept the peace. I always give the same answer. No, because family isn't about control. It isn't about silence. And it isn't about taking what isn't yours just because no one stops you. Family is supposed to feel like home. And if it doesn't, then sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your name, your truth, and your dignity still intact.